Hey folks, this is BestInSlot, and, well, it was a big day today. I'm sure there must have been 1,000 different content creators uploading 1,000 different gameplays that are only really slightly different from each other. It can be a little hard to keep track. So this video is simply going to sum up and showcase everything seen in today's videos, starting with everything I'm going to pull from my own footage. Let's get started. So the Dominion Biosyn Expansion is launching with a Chaos Theory mode, which we didn't see, and a new separate campaign. You do launch into it completely separate from the old campaign from the main menu. The first mission of this campaign is what you saw today, and I believe there's one more mission that follows after this, which we also didn't see. The first mission probably takes about 75 to 90 minutes to complete if you're trying to do it and not kind of screwing around for YouTube purposes. And it has you moving to Biosyn Valley and helping to launch Biosyn's operations there by doing research and unlocking new dinosaur species. The tone of the campaign is interesting because Biosyn are essentially villains, really, but they're not really portrayed that way. In fact, Dodgson is downright reasonable. He's very softly spoken. There's a lot of dialogue and a fairly logical story progression for what's there, so it's a really good start. There were a lot of the new features visible, so let's dig into these first of all. We saw the new building set for the first time, all of it with a very Apple or Tesla HQ sort of vibe. Lots of curves and sort of shiny white metal, pockmarked with foliage in that corporate sort of way, you know, where you're kind of a drone in a big facility, but hey, he's a tree. That includes a new decoration set which focuses on new fountain designs, including the one seen in the IMAX poster for Jurassic World Dominion, and on new lights, all of which have a vague, sciencey look to them and are rendered in a bronze sort of tone. Part of the new building set includes a new Hyperloop system. This is a method of connecting some key buildings like viewing towers and power stations without the need for above ground paths. I wish it had extended to maybe even more buildings, but it's a nice little system for making neater parks. It's really good in particular with your viewing towers. And I really like there's a little underground tunnel car animation that comes along with it. It zooms along under the ground. Again, it does feel very Tesla. It also includes the new invisible fences. These are a strip of thin metal requiring power to fire invisible death lasers, I assume, into the sky to dissuade your dinosaurs. You can attach gates to these in the usual way, and they really are a really good way of keeping your dinosaurs enclosed. They're a really attractive way of building exhibits. Parks can now feel so much more open and freeform. My one problem with them is that there's no indication as to whether a gate is open or shut unless you actually click the gate itself. It feels like there should be some small visual indicator there, but I digress. The campaign has two new progression systems locked into it. The first is the main Biosyn HQ, which you'll develop with research levels. There's not much to say about this. There's 4 research levels. Each one builds the building a little bit bigger until the end where you end up with the full Biosyn HQ building, which looks fantastic, it must be said. The other is a little bit more interesting, and that's the Amber Mines. Rather than accessing all the dig sites from the get-go, you have to unlock the ability to venture deeper into these amber mines, with the more valuable species located in the deeper levels. The mines are operated in the same way as the regular dig sites, but reward amber pieces instead of fossils. I wish there was something else to make this mechanic a little different from the main game, but in terms of thematics and visuals, it was a nice and appropriate change at the very least. Finally, there's 2 new maps coming, though we only saw one of these, Biosyn Valley. It's a good sized map with a really nice atmosphere as this mist kind of creeps through the trees, etc. I'm curious to see how it'll be taken into Sandbox given that giant HQ building, but it was a really attractive map. Moving on to the species, we only had access to a few of them in this DLC. Things like Quetzalcoatlus, assumedly part of the next mission instead. This one contained Dimetrodon, and it's absolutely adorable social animation. It needs a little tweak for the anti-clipping, but the animation is fantastic, it really is. And the Pyroraptor, whose social animation amps up the bird-like quality of the dinosaur. Both looked really good in game. Dimetrodon in particular I grew to really like, and I'm really excited to see what Frontier's skin version of it is. In retrospect, I wish the feathering on the Pyro was maybe a little bit more individual looking, just a little bit more differentiation there. But it is a decent facsimile of the film version regardless. The others are Dreadnoughtus, which I didn't see because I was too focused on trying to make my Therizinosaurus and Giganotosaurus fight, but I'll include that later from someone else's footage. The Therizinosaurus and the Giganotosaurus. Therizinosaurus is potentially my favourite dinosaur in the entire game. It just looks so incredibly different to everything else we have. It's threatening and intimidating, but also gangly and awkward at the same time, and it's a herbivore. We just do not have herbivores that look like this. The feathering turns out better here than on the Pyro because it's more like a furry covering than those larger individual feathers. It also just has some absolutely brilliant unique animations which again are not present anywhere else in the game. The Giga looks like the Giga. It's definitely made the transition from film to game well, and how much you like it is just going to entirely depend on how much you like that original film Giga design. I think in a weird way that the design is pulled off better in the game. It just seems to work a little bit better in a game setting, I suppose. And it does feel very demonstrably different than the original Giga, to the point that it feels almost like a new species, which is pretty cool. And that's about it for stuff I saw myself. I'm throwing in a little bonus Giga versus Theri fight here at the end though. This is really what I was focused on trying to make happen. They didn't really work out, it must be said. I'm going to save my thoughts or deeper critiques or whatever for when the DLC actually comes out and I can play it in its entirety and I'm not worried about, speeding through things to make sure we get it all in for YouTube, etc. And that comes out in just 5 days' time on the 14th, so come back then for a full campaign and Chaos Theory playthrough, and of course a deeper look at every single new species in the game. Thanks again to Frontier for letting me check out the DLC early. I had a great time, and I hope you're all excited to get your hands on it in 5 days' time. I'll see you next time.
Houston, if you're ready, we'll maneuver. Reaching out.